Well, hello, how are you all? What an unexpected turn of events. Oh, wow. So you've got your power back on, Jay. That's awesome. Oh, dearie me. This has caught me a bit on the hop. I was not prepared at all. Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm sorry about your power. I'm glad it's back on. Yeah. I hope I'm not too loud. I've been playing with it, but it doesn't see ya. Hey, Rod, how you doing? How everybody? Pleased to have you all here. I've got to get my breath. Just give me your 2 ticks to settle down a bit. Excuse me. Well, I thought today I would go through exporting DAZ Studio scenes to Blender 2.81a. Some of you may have already seen the video I did of it, TeleBlender, on YouTube. That was with Blender 2.79. I was going to do it with Blender 2.82, but unfortunately they've changed the Python API and it doesn't work with 2.82. So stuck at 2.81, which is fine because it's pretty good for what I do. Now, I'm not completely au fait with the new Blender. I don't use Blender as much as I used to, so you'll have to bear with me if I do things the long way around or I get it wrong. I'm still learning the new interface and the new commands and everything else because my brain is definitely still stuck in 2.79. I don't know why. Maybe it's the age of the dog. I don't know. Anyway, I shall bring up a scene that you've seen the finished product on my ArtStation page. If you hadn't, you can go and have a look. This is, and Rod knows exactly who this is, Little Bit and the new car I bought her. So this is the one that I'm going to run through exporting it into Blender 2.81. So it's and I'm using this because I can, and it has all the elements in it that you need. It has an environment map in the render settings up in here. It has the I have a Studio HDR in here. I have one specular highlight, and that's set to specular only, just to give her eyes that the reflections and some depth. So that's why I'm using this scene today. Now, if you haven't got TeleBlender, and I got to find it now. Which one is it? This one? No, it's this one. I will put a link on my Discord server under Blender, the Blender channel, to TeleBlender. Now, it says up here that it's a temp release. The last time he updated it was in September last year. Sorry, August last year. And he hasn't updated it since. He did create another one called, what did he call it? Oh, this one, it's called TeleBlender FBX. Now, this was a variation on this version of TeleBlender that uses FBX. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work that well in the materials they're a bit wonky, and I find it very difficult, and it was horrible to use. So the one you really want is this one, and you can download them here. And once you've downloaded them, you need to put them, and you can follow his instructions on here. I'm not going to go through how to install it. It's not an install add-on zip file, the way you would normally install in Blender. You actually have to unzip it or unpack it, and then copy the files into the Blender modules folder and copy the scripts into the DAZ scripts folder. So that's what it has. This is what it's all about. Now, he doesn't use FBX export format in this. He does use OBJ. So if you're wanting to do animations, this is not the version for you. You could try the FBX. I don't particularly like it, but we'll see how it goes. Now, once you've copied the script, which is here, into your, which is, yeah, that one there, into your scripts folder in DAZ, and I'll get it right in a minute. What am I doing? That's better. Don't even know what buttons I'm pushing at the moment. Yeah, yes, there are, Jay. There's two different versions. I don't like the new one, but there again, I don't do a lot of animating, so it's, if at all. So it's of no real interest to me. But once you've got it all installed, yeah, all you need to do is double click on here. Now it will bring you up a dialog box, and I think I'll go so we can see it a little better. I might go screen centered so you can see it a bit better. There are some options that you need to set before you actually go holus bolus and export it. You've got your render engine that you want to export it to, and that basically sets the render engine in Blender. So if you were to choose Eevee, it would set the render engine to Eevee, Cycles, or Workbench. I don't know why these two are still here, because I don't think anybody would ever use them. And then we need to set up where we want the blend file to be saved in here, and I'm going to run through that in a minute. Down here we've got use these settings. So if you've got a graphics card GPU, you can use the GPU with CUDA, whichever way you pronounce it, supported or experimental. And over here you've got samples. Now these are the render samples, not the viewport samples. Now it's set to 500. You can set it as low as you like or as high as you like. It's entirely up to you. The original version of Teleblender that came out in Blender 2.78, I think it was, yeah, 2.78. When you ran this script, and it will start Blender for you, it would then open the file in Blender and start rendering it. Why you would want to do that, I have no idea. This version does not do that. It will export it to Blender, open Blender, and off you go, and you can start manipulating. But this is where it will set the samples. I'll leave it at 500. Export. Now this is where you want to put the OBJ file. Now you will get several OBJs, and you'll see that in a minute when I actually export it. We have auxiliary options here, and I used to leave it at node mats, which uses the Blender node material nodes. I don't use any of these, and this is in that game where you set where the blend file for those will be. Your normal map strength, it defaults to 0.5. Now it doesn't matter what you set in here, because you can change it in Blender later. So it's a bit arbitrary if you wish. Collect maps, well, that's pretty self-explanatory in that it collects all the texture files that you have on your characters, your props and all of that. This will export the current DAS camera as noted by this up, well, you can't see it, but up there. The DAS camera, it will export all the lights and the scale is at 1 and just leave it at 1. If you have a number of cameras in your scene and you want those cameras, so you've got the scene set up with different cameras for different angles and different aspect ratios and blah blah blah, you can check this box in here and it will export all of your cameras. So then you can go into Blender and you can make each of the cameras active and render different views. World environment. Now it's picked up the environment map that I had set in DAZ Studio. Now you can either choose to use it or deselect it and it won't use it. You can also use just the background color and not that. With the environment map, you can actually rotate it in here before you export it. I never have, but it's there if you need to. Now under animation export, now this does export animations and it will export the animation range, play range, or you can create a custom range where you can do like frame 15 to 45 or 10 to 30 or whatever you like. Scene frames to render, same thing as above, and it will start rendering them. Oh, that's no good, Chrissy. I think everybody's having internet problems at the moment. It's unbelievable. I think it's got something to do with the undersea optical fibre. There you go, Brian. That's something you can fix. Get under the water and fix it. No, it's not a good day for technology. I'm surprised everything... Well, I'm not going to say any more. I don't want to test fate or tempt fate. So you set the path in here for your output. You might be, what is this thing with toilet rolls or toilet paper? I don't understand it. I've been reading on the internet how in Europe and Great Britain and northern US or North America, I should say, and South America, supermarket shelves are emptying. People are buying in bulk. I don't understand it because we don't have that here. I haven't seen any of this. We don't have the panic here that seems to be enveloping the world. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're full of you-know-what. Stupid demic, you're dead right, Rod. Anyway, I won't say any more on that. If you're not doing an animation, you can turn the material properties are not animated on, and it won't animate the materials. Somehow I don't know. I don't know what that's there for, to be honest, because there are a few things that Blender, when you export using TeleBlender, will not honour. It doesn't know what to do with them. The first thing is smoothing. So if you've applied smoothing to anything to make clothes fit properly, Blender will not honour it. You must use a morph. And if you don't have a morph for that item of clothing or whatever it is that you need to add a smoothing modifier, if there's no morph, then you're going to have to create one because, excuse me, Blender won't honour it. The second thing that Blender won't honour are procedural materials. Iray procedural materials. It will not honour. And you'll see that in a minute. There's another one, and then it's completely out of my head. If you're using mesh lights, it will bring them in as a mesh light, but it won't set the emission shader, and it won't set a power. So if you're using mesh lights, be very aware of that. So that's the three things. Does not honour smoothing. I'm not having a good day. Procedural materials and mesh lights. So be aware of that. Now I'm going to go through and set all these up in a minute, but down the bottom of this dialog box here, you'll see that there's 6. There's make blender scripts here to fix the FBX materials. Now, I've never used it, but you can play with it. Make blender script to fix the animation FBXs. Just export the current frame with OBJ, your MTL file, a Python file, and a batch file. And the batch file, the .bat file, actually starts Blender with all of these settings. But with just this, it will just export them all. It won't start Blender. You then have to go and find the batch file, double click on it, and it will jump into life. You can export the animation based on all of the stuff that you set up in here. You can restore it to its defaults, so all of these entries in here will become blank. And of course you can exit. The only one I ever use is this one here. That's export and open the current frame in Blender. So it exports the OBJ, it creates the Python script, it creates the MTL file that goes with the OBJ, creates the batch file that then opens Blender. And I'll show you the contents of the batch file a little bit later on in the stream. Now the first thing we need to set right from the get-go is this little baby in here. That is the location of your Blender executable file. And as you can see, I'm running 2.81. Now all you need to do is click on the Browse button, go and find the blender.exe, and you're set. So now I'm going to run through populating all of these, little dooveries in the dialog box. And I've just spilled coffee all down the front of my t-shirt. Oh well, it was clean, not anymore. Right, I think I might go back to center screen so you can actually see what I'm doing. Right, so we've set our Blender executable where it needs, where the script will write that to a Python script on the location of your Blender executable so it can start Blender once it's finished doing its magic. First of all, we're going to main options. We need to find somewhere to put the blend file. So I go to Browse. Now I've already got it up here, and I think I've got one in here. Yeah, I'll just put it in here, and what I'll do is I'll call it little bit 2, and I copy that now, save me having to retype it every time. So I put it in a little bit, then I come down to here, same thing, go up, go into a little bit, Control V, save, auxiliary options, and we do the same thing here. And it will remember this, so the next time you open TeleBlender, it will have all these settings in there. Now I'm not doing an animation, but I will set this just for you know what and giggles. And I'll change it to a PNG, Control V, and save. Now, it's a good idea at this point to actually go back and check that you've filled everything out properly. Otherwise, you'll have files all over the place. So that's set properly where I want it. That's set properly. That's my executable. I'm using the HDR file in the environment. I have it set to cycles, 500 samples, using my graphics card. I've set where it needs to export. So now we're going to hit I'm going to click on the export and open the current frame. Now this will take a while because it will open Blender and in the background it will be processing all of these files. Okay? But before I do that, I want to do that. So off she goes. Now this is going to take a little while. Give me time to brush the coffee I spilled on me off and have another sip. And how fast it does this, it depends on your computer and the speed of your hard drives and etc, etc. Sometimes it does it very fast on my computer, sometimes it's a bit slow, but it does get there. And now it's saving the geometry. And any tick of the clock, it will open Blender. Now, you don't have to have complete scenes ready to render. If you're wanting to get an article of clothing or a prop that you want to use in Blender, you can use TeleBlender to bring it in from DAZ Studio into Blender. It doesn't have to be a full scene ready to render with the camera set up, but you can use this to export it. And here comes Blender in all its glory. Whoa, that is scary news, James. That is seriously scary. Well, you'll have to bear with me while Blender does its thing. Oh, this coronavirus, I mean, yes, we hear about it here, and the government's been issuing caution that we should proceed with caution, but go about our regular daily lives. I've not seen any panic at supermarkets. Our government jumped on it pretty quickly, and it's a majority of them are overseas visitors that have brought it in, or Aussies that have gone overseas and come back. So I'm hoping that it doesn't affect us. Really, really, really bad. Oh, and there we are. There is Blender. And it's set the camera. It's set everything up. And if I go into the shading tab and go to world, you will notice that it's using the same HDR file that DAZ uses, and it's all set up. It's got the, excuse me, where is it? The iLight is in here, and it's transposed the power settings from DAZ Studio, so it's already set up. Your camera's set up to exactly the same aspect ratio. Now what I normally do is I separate all of these in here into collections, but I'm not going to do that today because it's not really necessary unless you want to turn things on and off. Yeah, I know it's going to spread, Christina, I know, but it's a very big country with a very small population for the size of it. And so far, we don't really have a, there's no panic at the moment. So anyway, getting back to Blender, go up into here and oops, you will see that it's set the render to the 500 samples that you set in the TeleBlender interface. It's set to cycles on supported and GPU compute. Now, if you remember what I said earlier about procedural materials from DAZ, not iRay materials, not coming across properly into Blender. Now, this is a perfect example of what happens when you use a procedural material. And you can see on her eyes, they're not right, okay? And the procedural material that I used on the automotive glass is not right. And even some of the car body is not quite right because it doesn't know what to do with the procedural material. So if you're going to use, if you're going to be looking at exporting your DAZ scenes into Blender, I suggest you don't use a procedural material. Just use a standard iRay material and it should come across all right. But this can be corrected very easily. So I'll just, I'll get out of that. And you'll notice up here, if I go to the, sorry, put the coffee down, go to the top right here, you'll notice the way it's named some of these things. It names them and follows the object naming in DAZ Studio. So that's actually the Girl 4, which is a derivative of Victoria 4. So no, it doesn't work in 2.82. They've changed the Python API, it doesn't work. I've contacted Jacques, aka MCasual, but I'm quite sure he's aware of it. Whether or not he provides a fix or a new version, I don't know. So we'll just have to see, watch this space. So it names all the items as they were as an OBJ from DAZ Studio, but you can always rename them. It's no big deal. And all of these, they've got the OBJ as well. That's the car, and that's the OBJ for the car. It's got the standard camera in here that comes with Blender, but you can blow that away too if you don't want it. Now, what I'm going to do now is do this and zoom in a bit, go around, bring her down, up we go, and bring her in. Right, now I'm going to change the material on Littlebit's eye cornea and her eye surface so that it actually does what it's supposed to do. Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can do it the old-fashioned way, which is to go to your file, append, go away and find the material that you want to use. In this case, I want to use a Blender Cycles cornea material, which has the right index of refraction set at 1.38, and all the rest of the bits and pieces, the reflectivity, etc., and Fresnel or Fresnel, whichever way you want to pronounce it. But I find that really tedious, so I have Mr. Lepellier's Asset Manager, and this is what I use, but you can do it the old-fashioned way. Now, I will provide a link to the cornea material, the cornea.blend that I have created, or I created it back in 2.79 days. I'll put it on Discord under the Blender channel, so if you want to go and get it, you're quite welcome to use it. So So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go down here to my human shaders, and here I have a cornea which I'm going to apply to her eye surface. So I go into materials, and I have to come down till I find cornea. Aha, there we are. And there's the cornea. If I put the preview on, you can see it didn't know what to do with it. 0. So I'm going to add that to her eye now, but I will put that on first so we can see what happens. And yes, I'd say you can do it the old way with the append as well. That's not a problem. I go down to here and I just apply that to the cornea. Don't make a liar of me, come on. Here we go. And we also have to do it for the eye surface, which is that one. Now I could create a new material in here and call it eye surface, but I'm a bit lazy and it doesn't really matter what it's called, to be quite honest. So I'll do that again on the eye surface, and that will correct, when it thinks about it, that will correct that problem. So now she's looking okay. And we can go back to the rendered view. And what else do I want to do? I want to do that. So we're actually looking at it properly. So now that's it rendering just in the viewport. Okay. Now that's how you get it into Blender. Now what I like to do when I've got this far is go and save it into Twitch streams, and I'll just call this 2. And save it, because I had Blender crash yesterday. I had DAZ Studio crash yesterday. So I save. In fact, normally after every manipulation, anything I change, I do a save. So I do have incremental save turned on. So that helps a little bit, but you do still lose, and I've got it set to 15 minutes. So it's, yep, save. I did zoom out, Christina. It's zoomed out. Okay, I'm going to show you well, before I do that, you can tell that the car isn't quite right. And I'm going to go through that right now on how to fix the material on the car. I'm sorry, I forgot to zoom out. Shoot me. Yeah, fix the car material. The way to put these, my logo on the car is a little different in Blender than it is in DAZ Studio. But that's really outside the subject matter for today. I will do another video on adding decals or decals, whatever you want to call them, to your models, because I did it in a previous one and it works very well. I'd never done it before. I did it yesterday. Very interesting process, but it works very well. So I'll get out of that and go into the just the normal object view. There was something I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was. Can't remember. It'll come back to me. Right, as you can see here in here, it's got a lot of material zones. But the one we're looking for is body 1, or body and body 2, and that is the body of the car. But the first thing I'm going to do is the glass, which is that one, and fix the glass up. And again, I use Asset Library or Asset Manager, and I'll find it in a minute. Glass Automotive. And hopefully I picked the right one. Sometimes I don't. Okay, so that's fixed that. And we'll also do the lights, which is that one. No, that's not the light. Oh no, it's fixed it. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. So now I want to go through, and you can go through these and you can reassign Blender materials to your objects, the vehicles, your props, whatever you like. You can create new materials. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Once you've got your DAZ Studio scene into Blender, there's no reason why you have to leave it at that as it came in. If you wanted to add more cameras or add more lights or do exactly, bring more props in, you can do that. It's not fixed in stone. All we've done is bring a DAZ Studio scene into Blender. Once it's in there, you can manipulate it as much as you like. So, and that's one of the things I like about it, is that it honors 98% of everything from DAZ to Blender. It's awesome in my opinion. No, James, they're not posable. They are OBJ, so there is no rig. There's no rigging. If you want to pose characters, you'll have to use an FBX format, export it out of DAZ and import into Blender as an FBX. And all the morphs that come with it, facial morphs, movement morphs, you would also have to export as FBX separately, and they would come into Blender as shape keys. That's an oversimplification of the process, but that's pretty much what it is. These are only OBJ files. There's no rig at all, so you can't pose it. It's just static. So yeah, more complicated. So now I'm going to go and change that the body on that car. If I can find it again. Yeah, right. And I'm going to go into car paint. And for anybody that's interested, I'm not quite sure how much it is. It's about $39 US, I do believe, for Asset Manager. It comes with a few assets, but most of them you have to put in yourself, and his documentation is absolutely wonderful. Very easy to use once you get used to it. I suggest, if you're going to be doing this a lot from DAZ to Blender, that you have a look at Asset Manager. In fact, for Blender in general, have a look at Asset Manager. I think it's the best investment I've made in Yonks. So oh dear, Jay, none of it. Ugh. And here's all my materials that I've put into Asset Manager. I'll show you a link to all of these materials in just a minute. Now I want to put glossy white on that. And as you can see, it jumps into life. And now we have real glass. I can go through and find tyre, and I have one in here. Oh, where is it? Metals, natural, plastics, rubber. What's that? I'll put that on the tyres. And on the rims, on here, I'm going to go into metallic paint. No, I don't. I want metals. And we'll give it something. Oh, that'll do. No, it won't. Titanium, no. I'll just make them that. So now you've got it in Blender, and you can play around with it all, and you can really go to town if you want to, and change. No, Jay, they don't. He supplies 2 or 3 examples, and he does supply a nuts and bolts pack that comes with it, but you really have to put them in yourself. Now, what I did when I first bought it was I actually created a file in Blender with different objects, and I put the different materials on each of the different objects, and then with the object active with the new material on it, I added it to Asset Manager, which is the way it works. And it's not limited to materials. You can have whole scenes, whole Blender scenes. You can have your HDRI images. You can have objects. You can have props. And I'll just do this and I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what I mean. Where is it? Flakes red, flakes shadow, glossy red. Okay, I'll just drag this over, and if I scroll up, you can see up here, you've got, these are all buildings, but you can create these folders yourself, and he has wonderful instructions on how to do it. In here, roads, as you can see, I've got, and this is actually, what you see here is an asset collection from Kitbash 3D that I bought, and I opened them up in Blender, opened the FBX file up in Blender, and I then did them one by one. Very tedious process, took me quite a few weeks, but yeah. Yeah, I know, but yes, it is very time consuming, Christina, but once it's in there, now he hasn't done the batch, and I wish he would, but I mean, I spent weeks doing this, putting all this stuff in, and now it's there. So I suppose the upfront effort was worth it for me, because now I've got it all in a huge library of, I've got shader balls in here and blah, 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 and hardware. screws and bolts. This is the one that comes with Asset Manager, all your screws and bolts and U-bolts and stuff. Oops, these are all projects. Haven't got anything in there. Light rig. That's a light rig I came up with. I can just bring it in to Blender. I don't have to set it up again. I don't have to go into Append. Yeah, I think it's worth it, Christina. I really do. I mean, yes, it takes a bit of effort, but what you get back is more than what you put in because it's always there. Oh, okay, James. See you later, mate. Yeah, I know, it's just tedious. I know it is. I find it tedious too. And of course, then we've got our materials. And we have our HDRIs in here. I've got a few general. I don't think there's anything in there. And I've got quite a few in here. I don't know why I called it Skies, because it's got a lot of studio stuff in it. So I use this all the time. So I go back to materials now. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to render this. I'm going to show you the final output I did yesterday. Exactly the same scene. Because this takes about 39 minutes to render. And the reason it takes a while, even in Blender with a fast graphics card, is whenever, it doesn't matter what 3D application you're using, whenever you add a reflective surface, depth of field, any sort of fog effect, caustics, your render time increases exponentially. So because I've got a lot of reflective surfaces in here with her eyes and the car paint and the rims on the wheels, it takes a lot longer. I don't want you guys to be sitting there for 39 minutes watching this thing render. So I'm going to find where I put the original, the output I did yesterday. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? No, it's not in there. Twitch stream. Well, that's interesting. I'll find it. A little bit. Aha, found them. Right. That's the DAZ Studio render. And is it going to go? And that, which I did yesterday, is the one of the Blender renders that I did. Let me find what I'm really looking for, which is it this one? Yes, that's the Blender render I did yesterday, using exactly the same process I've just gone through. And once you've got it rendered and saved, you can take this into your graphic package of choice, Photoshop, GIMP, whatever you like, and you can manipulate it. But you won't get exactly the same result from DAZ Studio to Blender because they are different. They use different render engines, so it won't be exactly the same, but you can get your stuff into Blender very straightforward. I do a lot of post work on my images. Well, not a lot, probably 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen layers of effects and color grading and brightness and contrast and all that sort of thing. But and doing highlights and shadows with the color range. that's pretty much all I do and add my logo. What was I going to say? Yes, manipulating the surfaces. You can do it any way you like. You can do it the old append way in Blender if you don't have Asset Manager. Works just as well. You can tweak the materials in here. You can tweak the roughness or the glossiness value, particularly on things on skin surfaces. Now I could go in and change a little bit skin so that it's slightly more shiny. So there's a little bit of sheen to it. I haven't today, but you're quite welcome to do it. In fact, I will go in and show you. Oops, Stephen, wrong way. Just turn that off. If I go into a little bit, and where will we go? No. Skin head. That'll do. If we go into shading. Come on. If I go into object. And in here you can actually change the glossiness if you want it to. One thing I wanted to show you was the fact that Jacques, Mr. M Casual, has rewritten Teleblender for Teleblender 4, and it now uses the principled BSDF. So it's all coming in PBR to a point. Well, they are. So you can then tweak your materials. I'm not going to do it today. It's just personal choice, really. So that really is how you get DAZ Studio scenes into Teleblender. Pretty cool. Oh, I was going to show you the link to Blend Swap. I highly recommend this website for anybody using Blender. This is where I got the car paint nodes or car paint materials from. It's free under the CC-0 license. You can credit the author. In fact, I encourage you to credit the author if you're going to publish your works using that. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Nice to see you, buddy. Yay, cool. Glad you could join me. So this is really Blend Swap. Sign up. Go and have a look. There's some seriously awesome materials and props. Free. I mean, some you have to pay for, but most of them are they're free. So it's well worth going and having a look if you're going to get into Blender. Yes, it's all right, Chris. You can watch it later. It's just me waffling on. And the good thing about, let me do this. One of the wonderful things about, where has it gone? There. If I go into shading, now that, come here, that node tree there looks pretty intimidating, doesn't it? But that's the standard car paint material node setup. Now, if there's a color that you wanted to create that you don't have, doesn't exist, because I mean there's only 6 colors, I think, or 8 colors that come in that blend file that I just showed you before. All you need to do to change the car paint color is change the colours in here and you've got another paint colour. So you can actually add them. If I go into Asset Manager, now these are all based on that standard material node setup, and all I've done is tweak the colour. And once you've got it active in Blender, as I have here, like this, all you have to do is click on this add button and you will add another one to your Asset Manager. But anyway, I've been banging on about that for too long. Oh, nothing is ever easy to do in Blender. Is it easy to do in any app, 3D app? It's just, I wouldn't get too worried about that node setup, because you really don't have to, you don't have to touch any of this or any of this unless you want to. This is all, to create a new paint color, this is all you need to do. And it even has an entry in here for the metallic flakes. So deleting the default cube. Yeah, Stephen Scott on YouTube is very good at that. Poor old cube. It's always getting it in the neck. It's like will posters will be prosecuted. Well, chaps, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. I could take it further, and in another series of streams I will cover the animation side of it, using TeleBlender to bring in animations. It's very, very complicated. I wish he'd made it simpler. I find it easier to bring an FBX in and do all that yada yada. But yeah, I hope you got something out of this, and please go and download it, install it. If you have any problems installing it, just drop me a line on Discord and I'll help you out. Be mindful it does not work in 2.82. But that's not a showstopper, because if you've got 2.81 or 2.81a, you can bring it in, save it as a blend file, close 2.81 and then open it in 2.82. It's fine. So it just does not work automatically in 2.82 because of the Python API code change. Right, guys, was lovely hanging out with you, and I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know when I'm going to stream it next. Probably, what's today? Sunday my time, Saturday yours. Maybe Tuesday. I'll see how I'm going. I've got a lot of appointments this week. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and it's good day from me, it's good night from me, and it's good night from him. See you guys.